While we're waiting, Madam Chair, I'll simply say there was a unfortunate coincidence today for both Hunter and I. We wanted to make sure we responded positively to the invitation. But Hunter had to deliver some of his family to the airport for a plane ride, as did I. So if I'm not my usual energetic self, you'll know that we're down a couple of pints, but we really are grateful to be here.
Awesome.
Madam Chair, we're live.
All right, thanks. Thank you so much, Jack, and welcome everybody to the afternoon meeting of the House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure. We are here today with our invited guests from the Department of Public Service, and we go around the room and quickly introduce ourselves and our committee policies that folks who are here also introduce themselves and who you're representing. So I am Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District. I'm the chair of the committee.
And Representative Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury, Northern Essex, Vice Chair.
Representative Richard Bailey, Memorial 2-member district, newly elected.
Chris Barrow, Wyndham Windsor, Pennington District.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2 District.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Representative Darren Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, representing the southern part of Burlington.
Representative Laura Similia, Dover and Point 7.
Thank you so much. And if you're here watching today, if you could please give us your name and who you're representing.
Hi, Irene Renner, recent senator, recent member of CHITAC, the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee.
Thank you.
Andrew Brewer with Downs, Ragland, and Martin in this room here on behalf of Consolidated Communications.
Thank you.
Stephen Whitaker, advocate on these issues.
Chris Rice from MMR. We represent a number of folks, but I'm here listening for Verizon.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
You'll be with us in a moment. Yeah.
Gabrielle Molina with Downs, Ragland, Martin, and I work with the two electric utility cooperatives, Vermont Electric Co-op and Washington Electric Co-op.
Great.
John Brabant, Regulatory Affairs Director, Vermont for Clean Environment. Listen to what you have to say.
All right. Thank you. And Commissioner, thank you for joining us. If you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Yeah, this will be the first time. My name is Carrick Johnson. I'm Commissioner of the Department of Public Service. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, for being here. As was introduced, Hunter Thompson, our Director of Telecommunications, is with us. The approximate reason, as I understood it, Madam Chair, was to talk about the telecommunications plan. But in working with your team, what we thought would be useful, if you're interested, would be I could do 5 days into the job, give you but I don't come to it completely new. And I have some thoughts. And I thought it'd be good that just take advantage of this juncture to kind of set the table a little bit and then kick it to Hunter to go more specifically on the telecommunications plan.
In fact, yeah, being a brand new committee with a lot of new members, we'd love to start with an overview, in fact, of DPS, your agency and the work you do, and its intersection with our committee. And so really primarily we're interested in kind of a 101, and I think we should start there.
Okay, and how much time would you like us to take combined, please?
You know,
There are only witnesses.
yeah, I mean, an hour
Okay.
should be plenty of time. Yeah.
Honestly, I'll probably do a little bit. I'm not as conversant for like having the quick facts in terms of the overview of the department itself. I mean, I know some things, but I think I'm more focused. If we get a little bit, I think we'll discern like we'll still do like that 101 overview. But in all candor, speaking to that, I feel a little bit unqualified. Maybe Hunter, honestly, to this point, might be able to do in general. I know specifically how many employees and stuff, but in terms, I think where I would be comfortable, where I would intuit where you all would like to go, I might be a little bit weak on that, quite honestly.
Sounds good.
There.
Yeah, come on.
There is another folding chair over here.
Yeah, if you guys, feel free to pull up another chair and you guys can tag team.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, for the record, my name is Hunter Thompson. I'm the Director of Telecommunications and Connectivity with the Public Service Department. I anticipated this might be the case, so I printed out our new legislature orientation. In general, the quick overview, I'm gonna go through it because I'm not even as well versed.
Representative Sibilia.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure that we have copies for everyone, but it would be really helpful if that just gets sent to Jack, if that's possible for us to ask.
You have a copy? We can definitely do that.
Great.
Great,
That would-
super. So yeah, if you don't mind, submit that to our committee assistant. He'll get it to all of us and get it posted on our committee website.
Yep.
And would you prefer to go through your presentation and then hold questions, or do you want us to raise our hands as?
Whatever you prefer, Madam Chair. I'm comfortable. If you'd like to interrupt me, no problem.
Yes, committee members, as you feel led. Thanks.
So this is my understanding of the Public Service Department. Keep in mind, I woke up at 3 o'clock to bring my partner to the airport, and I've only been here 2 years. So the Public Service Department represents the public interest in energy, telecommunications, water, and wastewater utility matters. Our overall mission is to serve all citizens through public advocacy, planning, programs, and other actions that meet the public need for least cost, environmentally sound, efficient, reliable, secure, sustainable, and safe energy, telecommunications, and regulated utility systems in the state for the short and the long term. We're broken up in a few different divisions. We have the Public Advocate Division, who is led by Jim Porter. That is where our lawyers reside.
And what does that division,
Public Advocacy.
Representative Sibilia.
what does that division do? Like, how do they
Maybe
interact?
switch to the next slide. The Vermont Department of Public Service and Public Advocacy is directed by Title 30, Section 2A, 2A6, and 2B to supervise and direct the execution of all laws relating to the public service entities, to represent the interests of the consuming public in proceedings to rate changes, and to broaden the focus, starting that in cases requiring hearings by the Public Utilities Commission, the department, through the Director of Public Advocacy, shall represent the interests of the people of the state unless otherwise specified by law.
Let me just add there, for the record, this is Carrick Johnson, that fundamentally, right, the Public Utility Commission is the court, the adjudicatory body. The department is the advocate on behalf of customers. So I am appointed by the governor. So we are, you could say we are an arm of state government. We are an arm of state government, but there's a lot of latitude within a broad rubric of how we are to operate. But effectively, our role is to distill and advocate what we believe are the enlightened self-interest of customers, consistent with the laws that you all, as approved by the governor, you all set forth.
So
Fair.
fair. Represent the public interest as developed in various plans as a party in virtually all cases before the Public Utilities Commission. So. We also have the State Energy Office, which is led by Melissa Bailey.
And let me just, I'm gonna add, again, I'm trying to get the little color so you don't get a little.
No, this is
State-
good. We're not in a rush,
Okay.
so, you can mention an office and elaborate a little bit on what it does, and
Give a little color.
I'm just trying to follow along.
Yeah.
Follow along here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So the State Energy Office, the reason really why that was formed, because not a lot of states have that. First, you have the court that decides and the ratepayer advocate. They simply have one commission. So we were discussing before we started, there are various national bodies of legislators you can attend. And so the nomenclature doesn't always exactly line up. What we found with, especially say in this last 6 or 7 years, there's federal dollars that specifically cited this will go to the State Energy Office. And so you would have to waste time on your grant application and the like saying, well, wait, what are you exactly and have to do this? This was in effect to channel more quickly, respond, and also proactively go and identify those opportunities for securing funds to advance Vermont policy. So it's relatively new. It's led by a woman named Melissa Bailey, who's fantastic, who also plays a strong role on the Climate Council. So she has a very good role. But it doesn't have like the long pedigree that other departments have, other divisions.
Thank you. for the planning division, which is led by TJ4. I would prefer to defer questions for TJ to TJ because TJ is incredibly good at his job. I have a general overall view of what the planning division does, regulated utilities. So I'm sure you guys are going to be hearing from TJ through a couple of the bills that you have in committee already. I will go over if you like, but TJ is good if you want TJ.
Great.
We have engineering, which is led by Bill Jordan. Consumer Affairs, which is led by Carol Flynn. Energy and Efficiency Resources, which is led by Alec. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. Amstrad. And the Internal Administration Division, which is also led by Carol Flynn. And then the best for last, the Telecommunications Division, which is led by me, Thompson. I can go into depth on any of those. We have kind of a lateral structure with Christine Halquist and the Vermont Community Broadband Board. That's our lateral, and that's not a division within the department because it's a board created through statute.
Maybe one thing, especially I think on the tenor and the approach that what I'm hearing and seems to be the desired approach to this session, given the challenges that we all see. I will tell you that the Consumer Affairs, Customer Affairs Division, in responding to the needs of the public, it has really changed, and I can speak directly to it as it's changed for utilities, call centers, and the like, post-pandemic. People's tolerance for outages, people's tolerance for any bill disputes, people's tolerance for any perceived delay in restoration of service. You used to be able to get cut a lot of slack. Today, what you stand, we're doing it. You see a lot of love and affection towards the line crews. It's a different environment. It's a lot, although the term of art that was used is crabbier. So we're having, like, each call, each thing takes a little bit more time to resolve. And I guess I just point that out. That's in the environment in which we're operating. We're doing the best we can. And there's been much higher volume and just kind of honestly tougher conversations.
Representative Sebelia.
Yes, Commissioner Johnson, to what extent do you attribute any of the changing weather to the outage situations? I have seen data from my utility that shows much higher winds, much more frequently, much resulting in many more outages.
There's no question. There has been I think it's $15 billion. This is nationwide first. $15 billion weather-driven emergencies, say in the last year and a half. That blows the previous record out of the water. A corollary to that is I'm aware, I know for GMP, I think for Vermont Electric Co-op as well, that I'm going to get the years right, that 3 of the 4 most expensive storms, therefore the most damaging storms they've ever experienced, have taken place in the last 4 years. Things are changing. We know that. I'm aware, this is kind of fusing previous lives with this. I'm aware of a long-term climate study. What does that portend? These changes, it's a little bit hard to project from data when it's in a state of flux. But the projections currently are Vermont's climate will more closely resemble Tennessee. It's going to be warmer and wetter. However, it will also have the prospect of severe drought periodically. So believe it or not, the utilities are having to make plans for wildfires, which we saw this past summer, which haven't really been a problem in Vermont. And secondly, warmer and wetter, but secondly will also be the prospect of periodic ice storms. You're going to have more freakish wind that's harder to predict, that will have more disastrous effect. So net to the question, more frequent, more damaging, and thus more expensive.
So may I continue, Madam Chair? So Director Thompson had.
I'm going to say, we talked, I believe it was to GMP maybe a year or two ago, and they went through and they basically had done a study over the winter, and it used to be that Vermont would get one wet heavy snow event for winter, and then a lot of snow events, kind of what we've been seeing recently, which is light, powdery, fluffy snow. And in the past 3 or 4 years, that trend is reversed where we're getting 9 wet, heavy snow events where it snows when it's 28 or 29 degrees and the snow is just laden with moisture and water. And 1 dry powder day at the ski mountain event, so we've seen a definitive switch in that. In my time at the Agency of Agriculture, we had talked with a climate scientist from UVM who said that the expectation is that the total rainfall might not necessarily increase a lot by the year 2035, but the frequency that we get it is going to shrink. So we're going to get more rain events that are extreme weather events as opposed to consistent crop growing events. That's going to cause erosion, that's going to cause flooding, and that's going to cause our rivers to jump to the bank.
So,
Sorry.
Commissioner, as I don't know to the extent that you already know, this, but, if your department is I know you're charged with, providing oversight of utilities.
Yeah.
Are they, do you do long-term reporting on weather changes, helping us understand, what the vulnerability, that's not a great word, but climate vulnerability could be for the utilities?
So first of all, what I would say is that it's in the utilities' enlightened and prudent financial interest to ensure they have as strong a handle as possible on what's happening. So,
But is it the departments? So what is your role in understanding each utility's?
so let me respond this way. So far as I know, I think this is one of the cases where, frankly, given the resource available to us, where we seek to be as synergistically collaborative as possible, I don't think the department has engaged emergency management. I know the Department of Emergency Management has done, so our sister agencies have done it. The department itself, I think it's made aware. There's been some work with the UVM, Leslie Ann, the state climatologist. There's been some work there, but I don't believe we have discrete work by the department to do that.
To the extent that it impacts rates, and of course it does, recovery from climate events. It feels, and you all have oversight on rates, or the advocate on rates. So that just feels like a place that might be helpful for us to understand. I'm sure it's an evolving place, Madam Chair.
If I may, Madam Chair, here's how I would respond to that. Hunter, I think, quite rightly cited GMP in some work they have done work. Their initiative, the Zero Outage Initiative, I'm looking for. If you haven't heard it, you'll hear more about it, I'm sure. It's in the context of where there are assertions, where they're asking the department to stipulate, here is the meteorological data we have that determines, here's what these forces are going to do in the future. So with the opportunity, for us, it's more, we would contract with expert of opinion, put it under cross-examination as sworn testimony, test and do that, as well as the other resources I mentioned. So it's actually in the context of a rate proceeding and in the context of protecting ratepayers that our team collectively has become smarter and more informed on it. But I can't say that it's rare that we're the original initiator of the research. I would say, Madam Chair, to me, that kind of gives me an open,
No, Phil, sorry.
Well, I think it's important for you, in my opinion, to understand what my priorities are for this department in the areas where I think particular with a great team like people like if I can get this out, people like Hunter. I want you to know this because some of it, I think it's important you know my background and what I'm intending to do because it'll inform my testimony and shape the kind of initiatives and priorities we have. Is that?
Did you have a question first, Campbell, before we go on?
Yes.
And yes.
So, and following up so more specifically on Civilia's questions, the department had a role to advocate for consumers with utility and before the Public Utility Commission and with the utilities, which the PUC regulates. And I guess I just am wondering what specifically you think you can do to push the utilities towards hardening their infrastructure.
That is a perfect setup question. So, no, excellent.
It's a layup.
Excellent. Thank you, Representative Campbell. So I would say this, first, just a little bit, why I'm here, here on day 5. The governor, I was appointed, my past includes about 3 years for the Attorney General's office, 13 years advocating here in this building for an entity called Associated Industries of Vermont, 6 years at Central Vermont Public Service. Then asked to join Velco when Velco was in the midst of quintupling its assets. And when you build high voltage transmission lines, in particular in affluent communities along Lake Champlain, you're going to upset some people, and people were upset. My job was to create harmony, and we essentially had to fix everything. Our project cost estimating, our interaction with stakeholders, how we planned, how we designed, everything. And we got to a very good place. My role grew to include strategic initiatives. That included a startup that built a little transmission company when I was working for Velco, Vermont Electric Power Company, which, by the way, was the first transmission, another first for Vermont, the first transmission company formed in the United States in 1956. We created a startup based on the premise, if you have much more accurate weather prediction information, so a weather prediction model produced by IBM. I didn't name it. It's called Big Thunder. Sounds like a weapon, but that was the name of their software tool, linking that to better analytics for solar and wind generation. The premise being, if you have smarter weather and you have powerful analytics to predict solar irradiation and wind at turbine level, different models, exactly what that generation is going to be, you can reduce the amount of uncertainty from intermittent renewables, because they are. The more you can reduce uncertainty, the more you reduce costs. That became a startup. They asked me to join them. I did. That was Boston Consulting Group, IBM, and Velco created a company called Utopus Insights. And like less than a year from its launch, we sold it for $100 million to Vestas, the world's largest wind turbine company. So, and there was a lot of credit to go on with the distribution utilities, the regulators, the people who helped and supported as that research became a product, and then the company was actually sold. From there, I left Utopus Insights because it was shifting away from helping Vermont utilities, and I felt that was wrong. And I went to work for VEIC. I was really only there for like 9 months, loved it, and have friendships there that remain. But back in Vermont, I really loved Velco's mission, which is a different creature. And one aspect I'd share in this context is if Velco makes profit, if it makes money, it goes back to the distribution utility, but they are required to take that money off the top of customers' bills. So put another way, if Velco makes a profit, it reduces the pressure on customers' bills. So if you do a good job, everybody benefits. And if you screw up, everybody pays. I like that mission.
Just explain Velco for the 5 new members. You just explain Velco a little bit.
Yeah.
Velco structure.
As Hunter did, deferring to the people who actually work for Velco, what I would simply say, it's a transmission-only company. 2 things make it unique: governance and finance. I talked a bit about finance. Governance. It's owned by 17 the distribution utilities in Vermont, 17, and a public benefits corporation called the Vermont Low Income Trust for Electricity, VLIght. VLIght gets $1 million a year, and VLIght was formed when CVPS and Green Mountain Power joined. So there's 2 utilities. It became 1 utility. It's still the smallest investor-owned utility in the United States, but they joined. Oh yeah, by a lot. Joined, and part of the concern, though, in this body and elsewhere, was that what happens to the transmission lines, to the interstate highways, and who's controlling that. So the idea was, we'll spin off 30% of the ownership. We'll create this low-income trust for electricity. GMP conveyed 30% of their ownership in Velco to create this group. As a result of that ownership, it gets $1 million a year. And they are required to expend those funds in service of, now I'm speaking for VLIght as well, so they have their voice, 2 reasons: to advance the interests of the comprehensive energy plan and to help middle and low income people survive, thrive as we enter and make our way through this energy transition. So help those folks advance the interests of the clean energy plan, $1 million a year. There is no other creature like that anywhere in the United States. That's why I love it. I got done. I was working part-time starting in July, and long story short, The governor's persuasive when he wants to be. I resisted, but since I've been there, this is 5 days. I have to tell you, I may not look it at the moment, but I'm incredibly energized. I'm serious. This has been, I think there's a lot of potential we haven't tapped for a few years. And I think that coupled with there's a confluence of factors that lead this to a unique opportunity. So with that as my background, here's what I would say 3 areas I would talk about. One, ourselves, right? Heal yourselves first. What are the things we could do as a department? So one, I think, what information, what data do we collect? Who do we ask for in the form in which we get it? There's a lot of archaic we can do better. I would simply put it that way. I think we can do better. And that's important because it's inefficiency is costly. So if we can get better on data collection management, what we're asking for and the purpose and why, I think that'd be helpful. We've already been discussing, honestly, what reports we deliver that no one seems to read. What work are we doing we don't need to? Is there better mechanisms to get the data that we need, especially now as policies and the situation and the grid evolves? Are we asking for and doing right by the stuff we ask for? So we'll see. The other is,
And I'm sorry, just to drop it way back, to the 101 level.
Yeah.
So when you talk about data you collect and how, what form that data takes and how you publish it and use it, you're talking about data from whom, what kind of data do you guys gather? Like, let's drop it down a level, if that's okay.
I have a good example I can provide. So one of the statutory requirements of the Telecommunications and Connectivity Division is on an annual basis, we make a broadband availability map. So due to the agreements we have with providers, we are not allowed to identify the broadband provider at any specific e-site address or E901 address. We're just able to identify that this location has fiber to the home, this location has cable, this location has DSL, this location has dial-up. The VCBV creates a similar map due to their charge to bring fiber to the home. Their map is able to reference the FCC data, which tells you the exact providers which offer you service at the location that you enter in the house. So if you look at the grand scheme of duplicative data, even though we get this information, the way that we're able to disseminate it due to the restrictions that are placed on us is less useful than another board that's collecting the same data and putting it out to the public in a much more useful manner. Would you rather know that you can get fiber to your house? Or would you rather know the 4 providers that you can call to provide service for any particular utilities? I think that's a good example.
And the difference in that is whether you have access to the more granular FCC data. Is that what you're?
We have access to it, but we sign confidentiality agreements with some of the large providers when they send us the data, and they say our data is considered a trade secret, so we don't want you basically replicating it and putting it out there for the public to see.
Okay.
all right.
All right, onward.
Okay. Another issue, this kind of goes to the meteorological data and information we were talking about. There's some amazing partnerships at work in the state of Vermont. And I think working with a gentleman named Kirk Dombrowski at UVM, who is that title, he's a vice president for development. His job is a rainmaker. His job is to bring funds in to continue the research function for UVM across the entire university. And he's been incredibly successful at it. And we formed a coalition with utilities and UVM, the goal of which, the purpose of which was, you have expertise to go identify funding sources. The utilities, if you can, and they don't, the utilities as a rule, like they don't do that. But UVM has a whole team looking for pockets of money that might match up to their research expertise. The point was, if you could identify additional pots of money, federal dollars, that address, it's called use-inspired research. You have effectively, at least for the last decade, I've described Vermont as an innovation workbench. Shame on us if we can't do it here with the coupled distribution utilities, Velco, statewide efficiency utility, statewide fiber optic network, 88% to 92% deployment of smart meters. We have the data. We have the means to move. if we can collaborate on the application of analytics, we are decades, or certainly a decade ahead of virtually every other jurisdiction in terms of comprehensivity. It was leveraging that workbench capability that makes national labs who are engaged with the Vermont utilities. Why do they care about us? One, we have a high percentage of renewables. Two, we have the entities I just described. Three, we have the ability to gather, deliver data such that we can apply analytics to it and better and more decisions by partnering with these people and helping us. So I would say that's another area where how are we getting everything we can on behalf of ratepayers, customers, out of these partnerships for us? Is the department's role as that voice at the table when I believe it's implied, and I think largely, but I would be more comfortable if we had an active role in saying, like, yeah, I know you have these 4 tasks. Let's make sure that fifth that's directly on something that our department wants to do. I'll keep going. The other, I think, key area where we can secure and deliver value is the regional transmission picture. There's been a once in a generation alignment of the 6 New England states on how to study, how to select, and how to pay for transmission projects. The cost of transmission, and I can speak to this, there's a lot of people I want to make sure I let them own their narrative. But the bottom line is Vermont is joined at the wallet with the other 5 New England states in that transmission high voltage, 115 kV and above, those projects that happen to keep the system, keep the lights on, Vermont pays 4% of those costs. 4% of transmission cost in Vermont, 4% of those projects in Connecticut and every other New England states. The idea, the premise was we have a combined and collective interest in running a reliable grid. So what's happened is, though, that for reliability purposes, to keep the lights on, the rules are pretty straight and they've worked. 8 billion and counting of transmission that's been built. That's relatively unique in the US, except now for the Midwest, where they've really come and like advance the agreements to include environmental issues, explicit carbon and the like. In New England, they have now agreed, 6 New England states, with the regional grid operator, trying not to use, but it's called Independent System Operator, ISO New England. They're the grid, they oversee, they run a market for a wholesale competitive market, they plan, and they oversee and approve other projects, the kinds I was describing. The idea here, though, is if you remember the railroad wars, where do we build railroads and who gets the benefit? That's kind of underway right now in New England on transmission. The first project, and this is, we know reliability, we have agreement. We're going to go for policy-driven transmission. The region as a whole is all going, we have to get better on climate. We have to reduce the emissions. All of New England. Now, of course, there's flavors. Maine loves hydro. Of course they would. New Hampshire is reluctant on most stuff, but they come along on a lot that they do. And where we're at now is what is the next transmission project that gets built to address regional issues, regional combined in aggregate regional policy objectives, and at the same time delivers, it can't help but deliver reliability benefits. The first project under this new regime is going to be built between Maine and Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the largest energy consumer in New England, about 80%. They got together with Maine. There's trapped wind. There's not enough transmission to move wind in Maine. Build the line to bring megawatt hours of wind from Maine to Massachusetts. They have to, with the laws in place there, were appealed to the Massachusetts Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, you got to do this. So they're on the hunt for megawatt, and they found it. Northwest Vermont, though, is one of only 4 areas that was identified as a problem in the region. Vermont, and as I said, New England states also have combined aggregated clean energy policy, needs. What I was working on and what I'm a firm believer in, and where I think our representation in that debate can certainly be mindful of the collaborative and deliver a benefit to the region. But if we're able to secure one of those transmission options in Vermont, there's 2 things there's 2 major contestants of it, and this is for another, but the point is there's a competition underway right now. Arguably, because I think it was pretty much decided this would be the first one. The next one is up for grabs. If we're able to have a Vermont selected project that meets the regional requirements, there has to be more. There has to be 1-for-1 benefits to cost. And they're strict. And there's no accounting for carbon currently. That's going to be another spate of specs of criteria that it's going to be developed. So it has to stand on its own merits. But we know Northwest Vermont's a problem. But we know Vermont has clean energy challenges and wants to meet. The grid we need to be able to accommodate the in-state generation that we want. It's going to drive. It is driving transmission and distribution level investment. Well, who pays for that? If Vermont had to pay for all of it, given some of the policy objectives we have currently, and I think what's being contemplated, that would be very costly. If there is a way where we can design it and we have, say, more than nascent, less than completely baked, there are transmission options to meet our reliability needs and deliver it to the region, not just Vermont, to the region, because it's the shortest distance, for instance, to Hydro-Quebec. I would say that Vermont can build the most environmentally sound, lowest cost, most transparent, most accountable transmission of any. I would put it up against any of the utilities in New England. That will, on the backs of that project, will pay for additional distribution level investments. It will happen. What that means is there's other people helping to pay for the grid we need.
Commissioner, thank you. I'm going to pause for 1 second. Are we back online?
Talked with Jack and I sent a message to the speakers.
Yeah, so we are live. The issue is that the YouTube channel that was created for this committee it can't be used for 36 to 48 hours. So we're using a different link that is not posted on the website right now. I've reached out to IT and they are aware of this. So the meeting is being recorded and it will be posted online after. And IT will post the live stream link that we're using now in a few minutes.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep.
Okay, so I know I'm throwing a lot. The point is that competition is underway. There's a once-in-a-generation agreement among the New England states. Well, what's our posture? You have to make sure you deliver value to the region, but there is actually real benefits, I think, for the state of Vermont. And at a minimum, I think we have to ensure that that our interests aren't hurt at a minimum. And maybe there's a way that our interests are for us. The next area or stakeholder, I guess I'll go, would be the utilities and generators and telecommunication. Yeah.
You say Northwest Vermont is a problem in what way?
Well, right now, there are transmission constraints on the development of new in-state renewable generation currently. Now it's much less than those, they're much less of a constraint than what they used to be, say, 3 years ago. There's been meaningful investments made. But what you see is the continuing as additional regional generators drop off that area, because it has kind of a weak connection with New York. And as the system becomes more bi-directional, that's one of the oldest lines in the entire New England system, and it bleeds a lot of electricity. So one portion of that line that currently is there is being fixed. But when you look at the projections, if real electrification happens, which is underway in other New England states, and this is a regional picture, the pipes you're going to need to move the amount of energy that you're going to need, that's going to need to have low emissions, is massive. And we're already to some degree behind. And so they're looking where, as we expand and take these load projections, where do the problems pop up? The system will always be reliable. But where do we see the closest problems given what we see for projections? Northwestern Vermont is one of those places.
Thank you.
Yeah. Should be consistent. And again, a corollary to what I'm asking of my team, of our team. One is, I know where the innovation better said. $640 great. There's no reason we shouldn't be collaborating more closely. Cost and to improve how you build out. one of those key things is, and it's gotten much better, but what is going on with the grid currently? There are federal rules coming from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission because they see that there's problems. Do you have sufficient vision into the grid, what's actually on? There have been examples where some disturbance in the grid knocked off until like 3 months later. What happened there? What bodies that dictate saying is we need much better data. We need much better vision in depth and breadth as to what's connected, where it's connected, and when it's on and when it's off. We should be able, again, going back to the assets we already have in place, we should be able to move faster on that and move faster on that in a way challenged. I think that having some of it's like school boards, right? There's just a few people really matter. That time